The case of the brutal murder of Tupac Shakur on September 7th, 1996 on East Flamingo Road at 11:15 p.m. Tupac was the biggest superstar rapper the world had ever seen. He sold 75 million, some say as high as 125 million records worldwide, most of which were after his death. What happened to Tupac? Let's get into it. People often believe that Tupac was from the West Coast, but actually he was born in Harlem, New York on June 16, 1971. Unlike his street thug rap image, Tupac actually studied at the Baltimore School of the Arts, and some say that he was greatly influenced by Shakespeare, that inspired him greatly in rhyming. Tupac's rap career debut was in 1991 with a lighthearted, fun party song called The Same Song with a group called the Digital Underground. He also in 1991 released his first solo album, Tupacalypse. Not only was he a prolific rapper, but he soon got the attention of major studios, and he starred in several movies alongside major celebrities like Janet Jackson. Around this time in the early 90s, he also developed a really close friendship with another major rap star in the Notorious B.I.G., who was also from New York. He can be seen here on stage, in fact, rapping alongside the Notorious B.I.G. Biggie and Tupac became fast friends in the rap business. In fact, there was a time where Biggie would go to visit Tupac in California and stay on his couch. And at one point, Tupac had gifted Biggie an expensive bottle of Hennessy wine. Biggie had even asked Tupac to manage his career, which Tupac declined, but they remained friends. So what happened that tore these two apart? This leads us to the Quad Studio incident on November 30th, 1994. Tupac was scheduled to collaborate on a song with the Notorious B.I.G. at their local studio in New York. As he walked into the Quad Studio, he was ambushed and ultimately gunned down. He was brought upstairs to the studio as he bled profusely. There is where he saw the Notorious B.I.G. and Puff Daddy, and there is when he thought they had set him up. To make matters worse, the Notorious B.I.G., a few months after the Quad shooting, released the song Who Shot Ya?
Who shot ya? Separate the weak from the opsa. Leak hard to creep in Brooklyn streets. It's on, nigga. Fuck all that bickering beef.
It's unclear whether Biggie was referring to the Quad Studio shooting of Tupac as the meaning of Who Shot Ya, but it definitely came off that way. So who is Puff Daddy? Puff Daddy is the founder and CEO of Bad Boy Records, founded in 1993. He signed the Notorious B.I.G., Faith Evans, 112, Mace, Craig Mack, and several others. It was later revealed that Jimmy Henchman, a big-time rap producer and major cocaine dealer, was the one that had Tupac gunned down at the Quad Studios. We now get to the start of the downfall of Tupac. After he was brutally shot at the Quad Studios only a few months later, on February 7, 1995, he was sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years at Rikers Island for sexual assault. He didn't have the bail money to get out. As he sat there in Rikers Island, he was contacted by none other than the CEO of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, a big-time Blood Pyru gang member turned rap CEO out of the West Coast, Los Angeles. Tupac signed the agreement with Interscope and Death Row Records to do albums and join Suge's record label. But along with joining Suge's record label, he also got Suge's enemies too. At this point, Suge had two major enemies. One of his enemies was none other than Puff Daddy, the CEO and founder of Bad Boy Records in New York. Suge's Death Row Records was mainly a West Coast record company, but he was eager to take it to the East Coast as well. Puff Daddy was standing in his way, and in August 3rd, 1995, at the Hip Hop Source Awards, he called out publicly Puff Daddy and embarrassed him on stage and asked all his artists to come join Death Row.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
Suge's second enemy is a little closer to home and a lot more dangerous. It's none other than the notorious Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, the leader of the South Side Compton Crips. Suge and Keefe D grew up together in Compton, and even when they were children, they spent time at each other's homes after they would play on the same football team together. Keefe D recalls going to Suge's house for pool parties and barbecues. While Suge was busy with his school studies, going to college, and playing football, Keefe D hit the streets. He became the leader of the South Side Crips and became an enormous East Coast to West Coast drug dealer selling cocaine all over the country. After Suge's college career and professional football career ended, he decided to come home, and then is when he hit the streets and joined the Blood Pyru street gang, and also decided to get into the record business. So what does Keefe D, the leader of the Southside Compton Crips, have to do with the Tupac story? Well, it all started when Puff Daddy needed a lowrider Chevy Impala for the new Usher video called Can You Get With It in August 1st, 1994. He called up Keefe D's Compton hydraulic shop and he borrowed Keefe D's personal 1964 lowrider Chevy Impala, as you can see in the video. It became clear to Puff Daddy that the only way to defend himself against Suge Knight, who was the CEO of Death Row Records, he was also a Blood Pyru member. The only way to defend himself was to join up or affiliate himself with someone like Keefe D, the head of the Southside Compton Crips. But he needed more of a formal introduction, and who did he use? He used his longtime friend in New York named Zip Von Martin, who was a famous drug dealer out of New York City, and he also owned a nightclub. But he was very close friends and associates with Keefe D. In fact, Keefe D supplied him kilos of cocaine. So he needed a more formal introduction, and that's where Zip Von Martin comes into play. Keefe D has said in an interview that he was driving in his car with Zip in Compton, and strangely, as soon as he picked up Zip, 2 minutes later the phone rang. Who was on the phone? It was Puff Daddy out of New York. And what did Puff Daddy want? He wanted to speak with Keefe D, and he wanted to ingratiate himself with Keefe D. And he asked Keefe D if it was safe for him to come to Los Angeles, basically implying could he get protection from the Southside Crips. And of course, Keefe D agreed. Send me 50 tickets or thereabout. I'll bring the whole crew with us, and you'll have a crew to roll with. And that's how Puff Daddy affiliated himself with the Southside Crips and began to get street protection from Keefe D. The deadly tensions between the East and West Coasts had been building for some time now, and on September 24th, 1995, rap star and producer Jermaine Dupri had a birthday party at the Platinum House in Atlanta, and he invited Suge Knight and his entourage from the West Coast and Puff Daddy and his crew from New York, the East Coast. According to people at the party, Suge was up to his normal bullying behavior, and according to some, he smacked Jermaine Dupri and Puff Daddy. They got into a screaming match, which ended up out into the streets. And according to Jermaine Dupri, as an eyewitness in an interview, he said Anthony Wolf Jones, who was Puff Daddy's fiercely loyal security, got into it with Suge's security, Big Jake, and end up gunning down Big Jake, and that was the first blood drawn. The beef, or the fighting between these two sides, wasn't completely lopsided. According to Snoop Dogg, who is a rapper at Death Row and is from Compton, California and Long Beach area, he said in the fall of 1995, he flew to New York to shoot a music video, and he called up a radio station, Hot 97, and they were telling everyone that they were there to shoot a music video, and Snoop, according to him, wanted people to come to the music video to be part of the video. And after that, he said he heard on the radio a guy call in who he swears was the Notorious B.I.G., and according to him, he quotes, "What's happening, Brooklyn? Stand up." And after that, when they were at the music video, shots were fired at the music video. And according to Snoop Dogg, that was directly related to the Notorious B.I.G. calling in the radio station, Hot 97 FM, and calling for Brooklyn to stand up and go get these guys from the West Coast on our East Coast turf. There were several other altercations between the two sides. Most notably was a guy by the name of Mark Anthony Bell. He was an independent record promoter, and he had gone to high school and done work for Bad Boy and Puff Daddy in New York on the East Coast, and he was now doing some work for Death Row on the West Coast, and he was invited to Suge's Christmas party, where he was brought upstairs and attacked by Suge and several people, and they demanded to know where Puff Daddy's West Coast home was, his address, and he refused to do it. And some people say he was forced to drink urine, he was beat up, they stole his jewelry, and then he did manage to get out into the hallway, where somebody he came with ran outside after seeing him, and there just so happened to be police nearby. But as per usual, Suge offered a settlement to Mark Anthony Bell, and when asked in court, Mark Anthony Bell said Suge had nothing to do with it. The rising tensions between the two sides finally boiled over on June 4th, 1996, when Tupac released the song Hit 'Em Up. Some people say it was the greatest diss track of all time. The insults were unbelievable. He had dressed up an overweight actor to play Notorious B.I.G. and a very thin, nerdy-looking guy to play Puff Daddy, and he insulted them completely through the video, and at the end of it, he threatened to kill everybody on the East Coast and everybody even affiliated with them. At this point, and completely terrified, Puff Daddy reached out to the notorious Keefe D, the leader of the Southside Crips. He asked to meet up with Keefe D. And the rest of this section of the video, disclaimer, this is hearsay, this is only rumors of what happened, but according to the police detectives that worked on this case, and according to Keefe D's own statement, he had said he met with Puff Daddy at Greenblatt's Deli on Sunset Boulevard. And according to Keefe D, and again, this is speculation, but according to Keefe D, Puff Daddy offered $1 million for the bounty, the hired hit of Suge Knight and Tupac. And according to Keefe D, Puff Daddy wanted them both taken out. He wanted them both murdered. Now we fast forward to September 7th, 1996 in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was the big Mike Tyson fight, and everybody was there. Tupac, Suge Knight, the entire Death Row. In fact, Suge was opening up his 662 Club that night. That was going to be the after party after the Mike Tyson fight. And then also, Mike Tyson and Tupac were very, very close. In fact, Tupac wrote the song that Mike Tyson would walk out to go to the ring. Also in attendance was none other than Keefe D and the whole Southside Compton Crips crew. They all had separate tickets and they sat in separate locations at the MGM Arena. Also in attendance was Keefe D's beloved nephew, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. And Orlando was known as a street gangster. He had put in work. He was being investigated for different murders through Southside, and he was a real gangster, and he had a reputation a mile long as someone not to be messed with. It should also be noted that just prior to the Mike Tyson fight, there was an altercation at the Lakewood Mall between a Blood Pyru, one of Suge's guys, named Trayvon Lane, and he was wearing a Death Row gold chain with a medallion with the words Death Row across it. And Suge Knight had given that to everybody a part of Death Row. And according to the Southside Crips and the people affiliated with them, Puff Daddy on the East Coast had offered $10,000 bounties on everybody that grabbed a Death Row chain because he possibly wanted to put it in one of their music videos as a rebuttal to the Hit 'Em Up song from Tupac. So Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, who's Keefe D's nephew, and several Southside Crips recognized Trayvon Lane, the Blood Pyru, at this Lakewood Mall, and they attacked him trying to snatch his Death Row chain. But according to sources, he actually didn't lose the chain. So you have the last several years of the East Coast and the West Coast fighting each other tooth and nail until it really boils over and we end up in Las Vegas for the Mike Tyson fight. So what happened on that September 7th, 1996 evening in Las Vegas, Nevada that left Tupac murdered? Well, it started with the Mike Tyson fight, and it was over in about a minute or two, and people, according to those that were there, went ballistic. Everybody felt ripped off. Then you had Tupac and Suge, and the entire Blood Pyru gang was with them. Their adrenaline was pumping from the fight they just saw. Everybody was absolutely beside themselves that it was over so quickly, and they all poured out into the entrance of the MGM. And who do they see? Trayvon Lane, who was the Blood Pyru that was attacked for his chain in the Lakewood Mall, who's with Tupac and Suge and their whole entourage. He sees Keefe D's nephew, Orlando Anderson, by himself wearing a football jersey in the entrance of the MGM. Trayvon Lane says, "There's the guy Orlando Anderson. Him and his Southside Crips attacked me for my chain." And upon hearing this, Tupac takes off running and attacks Orlando Anderson, striking him with a right hand and knocking him unconscious. And then the rest, Suge and the rest of the Blood Pyru gang and everybody with Suge, as seen in the MGM security footage, attacks Orlando Anderson. As he lay on the ground, they kick him unconscious, and as soon as it happened, as soon as it was over, and the footage shows Tupac, Suge walk as fast as they can through the casino, which caused pandemonium, and people started to follow them. Meanwhile, Keefe D and the rest of the Southside Crips were at a diner, and they were all supposed to meet up there, but there was no sign of Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, and Keefe D became alarmed. But then he got word that Baby Lane was attacked by Tupac and Suge and the whole entourage. Keefe D was furious, and he was not somebody to be messed around with. He had a long rap sheet, and he had been in and out of prisons for putting in work. And also with Keefe D that night was Puff Daddy's very close friend, Zip Von Martin from New York. And Zip said, well, this is the perfect time for us to handle that. And then according to Keefe D in an interview, because they did not bring guns with them from Los Angeles, Zip Von Martin said, I have artillery. And he took Keefe D out to his Mercedes, and he had a special compartment where he pulled out a .40 caliber Glock and handed it to Keefe D. Armed with heavy firepower, they head out into the night. Keefe D is riding passenger seat in a white late model Cadillac. Behind him is Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, his friend Big Dre, and driving is another Southside Crip, T-Bone. And behind them is a van full of the Southside Crips, and they head to Suge's opening at his nightclub 662, where Tupac was scheduled to sing. And according to the head of Suge's security, Mob James, he saw that night the Southside Crips waiting in the parking lot. They waited an hour, nobody came, so they decided to call it off. As they left the 662 club, they head on down East Flamingo Road, and all of a sudden they hear, according to Keefe D, "There's Tupac! There's Tupac!" And there was Tupac hanging out of the passenger side window of Suge's brand new 7 Series BMW, and Tupac was trying to pick up 2 girls and get them to follow him to the 662 club. Immediately, Keefe D hands the Glock to his nephew, Orlando Anderson. He says, "It's time." As they drive up along the passenger side, Orlando Anderson leans across Big Dre and fires off the entire clip into the side of Suge's BMW, striking Tupac multiple times and striking Suge in the head. When they finished the clip, the white Cadillac made the right turn and disappeared off into the night. Suge was treated and released. Tupac, however, would never recover, and several days later, at the age of 25 years old, he died. What do I think happened in the Tupac situation? I think Tupac was very intelligent. He was a trained performer at the School of the Arts, and he became what people wanted. People couldn't stop looking at Tupac and listening to his music because of the drama, because of the unknown. And also, I believe, when he starred in the movie Juice as the actor Bishop, he essentially became Bishop. Bishop, in the beginning of the movie, was with his friends, and he had been bullied a little bit. And then as the movie goes on, he becomes more and more extreme and getting into the street life and ultimately becoming a killer and even killing his own friends and welcoming death until he finally does die in the movie. If you listen to interviews by people who knew Tupac, they all say that he always wanted to be held down like that by someone like Suge. He always wanted to be like a legit, street gangster. I mean, he had the words "thug life" tattooed across his stomach. And some say it was a step backwards when he joined Death Row and Suge on the West Coast. He was already a huge movie star. He had already had albums out. And when he joined Death Row, he joined this street thug culture. I mean, Tupac had gone to Baltimore School of the Arts, and he wrote poetry and read Shakespeare, and he was not even from the West Coast. And according to Keefe D, when you listen to his interview, he thought that Tupac was somewhat of a set jumper, meaning he went from location to location. And in fact, Keefe D remembers a time when he was at a club in Hollywood and him and the Southside Crips encountered Tupac, and they asked him about a line in his song. And the line was, "Long Beach to Rosecrans." And that's a Southside Crip neighborhood, according to Keefe D. And when one of Keefe D's big enforcers from the Southside Crips confronted Tupac, the man with Tupac said, "Oh, well, he didn't write that. Someone wrote that for him. He was just singing." And they're like, "Oh, okay." But he didn't even know what he was rapping about, some might say, in some of those lines. But he became, and he wanted to become legit. And he was legit in his mind. But when he attacked someone like a real street shooting killer, like Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, that was a check he couldn't cash. However, if there was no fighting with the East Coast, Puff Daddy, the Notorious B.I.G., then you don't even have a Baby Lane Anderson maybe to fight with, or a Keefe D. Because if you believe what Keefe D says about the bounty that Puff Daddy put over Tupac and Suge's head, there wouldn't have been any green light on his and Suge's life if he hadn't gotten into it with his old friends, essentially. Ultimately, Tupac was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, lyricist, rhymer, rapper, actor that the world had ever seen to that point, and even to this day. But ultimately, he was his own worst enemy, and part of the genius of Tupac was what he struggled with in going down a dead-end road that ultimately, because he was so intelligent, he had a premonition in all the music videos, and ultimately he became Bishop from the movie Juice that he started. This guy on a one-way crash course, and who knows what he would have brought to the world as far as his arts and entertainment and rapping. And we lost him far too soon. And with that, thanks again for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for our next episode.